In this video, I'm going to invite you to step into my living room, sit down and have a cup of coffee with me and get inside of my brain. I feel like this is a little bit of my secret sauce that I've been using with my clients one-on-one because the girl or guy next door is extremely helpful to know that you are that as you're making brand decisions. But the tool gets even sharper when you identify the subtypes that fall underneath the girl and the guy next door. So you can make decisions about your brand, including your design, your messaging, and your policies and your packaging and everything that goes into your brand much easier when you have a more certain and a more clear picture of what your brand stands for. So we're going to dive deep into those most common subtypes that I see underneath your archetype. And then we're also going to talk about the evolution that your type goes through. So your archetype is good for brands that are building a community around their product or service. So if you're focused on bringing people together and fostering that sense of community and that mutual support, this is the perfect archetype for you. Also, for brands that want to differentiate themselves in a positive way from a more elitist brand. So if you are in a market where the leader is super expensive, they never have time to actually help people one-on-one, they're far removed from their business, they don't understand the realism of whatever challenge you help people with, whatever your product or service does for people, they're so far removed from that, the common experience of that they aren't providing, they're not relatable at all anymore. So it's a good way to differentiate when there's somebody like that in your market. I know in the online entrepreneur market, there are plenty of examples like that. This is also great for brands who want to be on the same level as their ideal clients or their audience, and you don't want to be a guru. Like, you have no interest in pretending that you are above anybody else. You're on this journey with people. It's not that you are the all-knowing being. It's something that you guys are figuring out together and that you're helping people along as you go. Also, in industries where there's a distrust of the leaders or a distrust of the status quo or a distrust of the authorities, so things I'm thinking of are like the insurance industry or pharmaceutical industry, a really nice way to differentiate yourself and to stand apart from the popular sentiment of the industry would be to adopt a girl or guy next door brand archetype. Also, if you are selling something that has a function that's used commonly in everyday life, your product or service is something that is normal, expected, common, not something that's super surprising or unusual, this archetype tends to work really well for you as well. And if your company culture is one that is very homey, very friendly, perhaps kind of casual, maybe it's a family business, these types of things commonly show up with the girl or guy next door type. Okay, so let's dive into the subtypes. So it can present in a few different ways. You may be the connector, the citizen, or perhaps the survivor. Let's take a quick look at each of these types. The connector is the first subtype, and you might also think of this subtype as the networker or the liaison. You bring groups of people together, and sometimes you also connect groups to other groups. So you are the person who knows everybody. You're the person who, when we need a recommendation, we go to you. Or if we need to be connected with somebody, you're probably going to know them. Oftentimes you are the person that's hosting events or get-togethers or meetups. You are a community builder. So the cultural context or the question to ask yourself with this subtype is, who needs to know each other? Who can you connect? And how can we all help each other out? So for example, it's really popular to bring together groups of entrepreneurs to have like mastermind events or even just support groups, for lack of a better term. And the people that organize these are the connectors often. the focus isn't necessarily on them, it's on the value that the group brings to each other. Next is the citizen. So I think of this one as like the friend, the neighbor, literally the guy next door, not just in personality, but in location. So these people tend to do the jobs that keep the communities and economies running, so you contribute to the larger community in your own way. So the question to ask in this subtype is, what value do you provide to the community? Are you building houses? Are you a plumber? Are you creating a space for creative people to come and work? What do you do that benefits the community? Lastly, the other common subtype that I see for the girl or guy next door is a little bit different. It's the survivor. So people who are orphaned, a survivor of abuse or catastrophe, turn to other survivors in those times of need. Or perhaps you haven't experienced it yourself, but you have some deep insight on how to help these people. But oftentimes you come from similar circumstances or tragic situations yourself, and then you lean into helping other people who are in that similar situation as you. So you learn to rely on yourself first and the community around you to heal, and then you use that same methodology to help other people through that type of hardship. So the cultural question to ask yourself to figure out how you live out this subtype, or if you are this subtype, is how can you help others in rough circumstances? What unique set of experiences and knowledge do you have about people who are hurting or feeling lost that you can use to help them? All right, lastly, so all of the other material in this entire course is the curation, culmination of years of working with clients with this methodology, and then also research and many different resources, basically everything I can get my hands on. So everything is remixed in my own, has come through my own filter and my own experiences, aside from this page. This page comes directly from the book by Carol S. Pearson, and it speaks to the evolution of this archetype. And it was too good to pass up. It was an excerpt from the book. I will link it here in this lecture so that you can read more if you'd like. But here are the different levels that she presents. So at level 1, and she calls it the everyman archetype, the everyman is learning to acknowledge the truth of one's pain, abandonment, victimness, powerlessness, loss of faith in people, in institutions, or authority. Level 2 is accepting the need for help, being willing to be rescued and aided by others. And then level 3 is replacing dependence on authorities with interdependence with others who help each other and band together against authority, developing realistic expectations. So in people, this archetype, it's born out of strife. It's born out of getting the short end of the stick. For brands, it may be a more strategic decision or just a decision that fits your personality best. So if you have a very relatable, very approachable, very friendly, very community-driven brand, this archetype fits you really, really well. And you may not have this level 1 aspect of like immense pain that came to get here, or you may. So the reflection that I'd like you to do as you look through each of these subtypes, and you've heard each of the different types, and now you've heard the different evolution of the overall archetype, where do you see your brand? How do you fit into this spectrum? Which subtype do you identify with most? Check out the page in the guidebook to lean into thinking about and exploring some of these questions.